Whoever survives and claims to speak for the remnant of the Iranian regime, maybe the Trump administration is counting on that person simply being willing to negotiate. And you leave the internal security apparatus in place. You don't go like you did in Iraq and put them all on trial and kill all of them and de-Ba'athify them, re-educate them and reintegrate them or something like that. But you simply swap out an obstinate leader with a more pliant leader, and you work on a new understanding where the Iranian regime can cooperate with the United States. Now, here are the problems with this way of thinking. Again, you're not going to remove an entrenched regime with air and sea power alone. The Trump administration knows that. The Department of War knows that. They know that if they really wanted to replace all these people, they would need a rival security service, political faction, and nothing of that sort exists. There are people that oppose the regime. There are other claimants to rule Iran, but none of them have the necessary support. None of them have the necessary organization or weapons. So it looks very unlikely that, again, any force other than a remnant of the Iranian security apparatus will rule afterward. And you have to expect that the Trump administration knows that. And so perhaps this is the expectation. They will pound Iran, hit them so hard, again, make them utterly defenseless so that there is not even the delusion, there is not even the myth that Iran is going to be striking a carrier with a hypersonic missile, that Iran is going to destroy Israel with thousands of missiles in a huge volley. And they will have to come to terms and negotiate with the United States on our terms. Well, here's the problem with this way of thinking. Famously, Tucker Carlson challenged Ted Cruz, who was in favor of an operation like this, and said, how many people live in Iran? And Ted Cruz had no idea. And he dismissed that and said, that's trivia. That's a trivial detail. What does it matter how many people live there? Well, it actually matters quite a bit, because a country 3 times the size of Iraq, with 90 million people and 1 million soldiers, is not actually going to be subdued by bombs. What happens the day or the week after Iran's military is utterly destroyed? Well, probably chaos breaks out. Probably people are going to try to flee, and the borders are going to destabilize. Probably people are going to rush to the stores and try to stock up on essentials, which will cause the economy to effectively collapse. There will be looting. There will be chaos. There will be a lapse in critical infrastructure, public services. You're looking at the bottom falling out from the country, and that will actually create a vacuum. It will actually embolden and buttress the Iranian security force, because there will be a need for order, and only that force will be able to provide it. What's more, here's the other problem with this. So Iran's security force is going to be there, attacking Iran, bombing all their cities, killing potentially hundreds, maybe thousands of civilians. What effect does that have on the resolve of Iranians and of the Iranian political leadership? If it's a remnant of the Iranian security forces, who is to say that these people, the survivors who just watched their friends, colleagues, leaders, spiritual figures get murdered in a war of aggression, who is to say those people are now going to roll over for the United States? Perhaps that works in Venezuela, a much smaller country in terms of territory and population, ruled over by corrupt people with no real ideology, not religious zealots, not even particularly nationalistic, maybe not even ideological anymore, but just plutocrats, just crony socialists or something. Maybe that works in Venezuela, where they're more worried about their personal enrichment or survival. But in Iran, a regime that is literally created by religious police, secret police, a vanguard revolutionary paramilitary with an eschatological opinion and interpretation of their own country and its role in the future of the universe, who is to say that the remnant of that security service is not going to be more hardcore than what came before? Who's to say that they will not be more emboldened, and their resolve won't be hardened after the strikes. And maybe they don't negotiate then. So what happens the day after? Obviously, then this remnant, whether they're in favor or against the United States, they will seek to rebuild. Just as the Iranian regime after Midnight Hammer began to rebuild the nuclear infrastructure and their missile capability, you have to imagine that the remnant of the Iranian security forces is going to try to rebuild also. It may be a much taller order and basically impossible, but we have to entertain the scenario, maybe the most likely scenario, that hardliners come to power, they retain control of the country rather than an uprising of the people, and they go to work building more missiles and the military. So what does the United States do then? Do they allow Iran to keep going? Do they allow Iran to rebuild and reconstitute on a long enough timeline? Maybe not in months or weeks, but over the course of many years. Obviously not. This gets back to that security equation. What was stopping Israel and the United States before from intervening in Iran? What was preventing us from doing this 10 years ago, 20 years ago? What prevented us from doing this is that we thought Iran was going to build a nuclear bomb. And if we invaded and if we tried to topple the regime, maybe before we were successful, they would have a nuclear bomb. And then they might use it. Then we're in trouble. Missiles, not a big deal. Nuclear bomb on top of a missile, that would pose a problem for Israel and the United States. So that is a deterrent that prevented us from operating in Iranian territory. But it was also their ballistic missile program. Maybe the United States wasn't willing to go in, but Israel always wanted to go into Iran. They were worried about the nuclear program, but they're also worried about the missiles, as you saw last year. When Israel forced our hand to intervene in Iran, it was Israel that had to tap out. It was they that had to plead with Washington to intervene to bring an end to the conflict because Israel was being bombarded with wave after wave of hundreds of Iranian ballistic missiles, drones, cruise missiles, and they were running out of interceptors to shoot them down. So why could Israel not intervene over Iran's skies? Because if they did, they would be bombarded with missiles and it would shut down their country. It's a very small country with not a lot of population centers, and it's hard to have commerce. It's hard to keep people there if your airports and your cities and residential buildings are being hit with hypersonic ballistic missiles. So Israel could not intervene unless the missiles were destroyed. Are you seeing where this is going? Now that Iran's nuclear hedge has been obliterated by Midnight Hammer last year and the operation today, now that its missile capacity has been severely degraded and its navy, which might be able to close the Strait of Hormuz, now Iran is truly defenseless. And what this does is it creates options for further engagement. So you might think this is the climax, this is the be-all, end-all, just as you might have thought the climax was last year. That this is it. This is the war to topple the regime. I don't think so. I think that when we look back in history, this will be characterized as yet another operation to degrade Iran's military capabilities, just like Midnight Hammer, just like the other operations. Just like the industrial sabotage, assassinating the scientists, just like all these other operations, this is about systematically defeating in detail Iran's military so that we can open up a front against Iran in perpetuity. So in short, what happens when Iran's security force takes back control over the country, and maybe it's led by a hardliner, maybe it's led by another reformer? Well, if diplomacy fails, now Israel and the United States, we can operate in Iran with impunity.
Yeah, Iran is cooked. America has officially fucked up Iran, and the whole country is going to be doomed pretty soon. 91 million population. Yeah, no government. They're all wiped out. No leader, no world leader. yeah, you're fucked. You're doomed. People are gonna start going to the streets, rioting, and fucking shit up. No law and order no more.